Guys, welcome back to the Coach Trap podcast. I'm joined by Dan Yoda Williams, and today we are going to talk about a common misconception. Dan, I'm going to tell you something. I want you to tell me whether I'm right or wrong, and then I'll look at this. Let's have a deep dive into it, and let's decide. When I'm on LinkedIn in particular and on Instagram, I see all these coaches, and they're always posting about themselves. Me. I had this problem. I was this successful. I did this. I did that. And I'm thinking, surely that's not right. Surely your post that you put out, surely that impression that you put out should be solving problems that person, that your target audience is looking for. The idea of stopping the scroll. What's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, so the number one priority should always be like helping the person that's reading. I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn as well. They kind of get a little bit egotistical and they talk about themselves way too much. But I think a story about yourself is always good, as long as it's related to the audience, as long as they can get something genuine from it, rather than saying something like, I did this really hard thing and this is why you should hire me, or something like that. It's not really gonna work. You should tell them the lesson that you learned from that story, rather than that's the reason you should hire me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Remember that stat that I was telling you, right? 86% of coaches will quit or fail every year. 50,000 new ICF coaches, 86% of them will fail. But then I saw another stat that 70% of them will succeed if they've got mentorship, right? So if they've been mentored, 60% of those coaches with a niche or niching down will also become profitable, right? There's something in those stats, something in that. And I think that is that if you talk about yourself, if you're generic, I'm not sure that stops the scroll. I'm not sure that's enough, you know? Surely what you need is that. It's like when we talked to Taryn, you know, and we were telling her that we want you to create 50 hooks, 50 questions that you think your target audience is looking for. Do you think that's along the right sort of lines, or would you adapt that? Would you change it? How would you even look at stopping the scroll, Dan?
Well, definitely analytics are your main priority. I always look at my best performing LinkedIn posts and kind of replicate them. So what I've noticed is that the posts that do the best are the ones with the best kind of lessons from them. It doesn't really matter what the hook is. It doesn't really matter what the subject is either. It's just whether the audience can get value from it.
Absolutely. Audience gets value. I love that. I think that's the most important. Not you get value from from having kudos or likes or people, look at it and think, oh, you did this, you had that promotion, you went through, even one of the real cliches is I went through this difficult time in my life, I can help you. I still think that's about them, not about you. That's them trying to please themselves. I'm not sure that's about ego, but maybe that's just a reframe that needs to be changed, isn't it? That actually what is stopping the scroll, if you look at, even when I'm looking for Instagram Reels or whatever, what stops the scrolls is that initial hook, bang, something exciting, something that grabs my attention. But actually more than anything, if it's a problem that I'm looking to solve, right? Not based on the person, how amazing they are or the aesthetics that they got, but actually the problem that they can solve. Dan, I'm going to tell you about a guy. I'm not going to name his name, but this is a great example. He posts on LinkedIn every single day. Every single day is a picture of him. It's the same picture, different location, and it's always about him. And I'm just thinking, I don't want to know about you. I want to know what problems you've got to solve. I want to know problems about, you can help me, or problems that I can take from you to put into my own practice, or whatever. How about we flip this? Have you seen anyone who's got good tactics or anything that's made you stop and go, do you know what? That's good. I like that.
I think it's just the people who are themselves, really, because you find a lot of people copying bigger people like Dan Coe or Alex Hormozy, or all these people who are talking about themselves, but they're multi-decker millionaires. And obviously they've got massive audiences which actually care. As someone who's kind of a stranger to most people, or a stranger to the clients that you're trying to attract, you've got to be all about them. You've got to be audience-centric, basically, and give them the most value as possible. Promise them the best lessons, and that's how you're going to stand out and win, really.
That's a really good point. Actually, talking about Alex Hormozy and Joe Smith as an example, I don't know too much about them. I don't know too much about their private lives. I don't know too much about what problems they've gone through, or their Sundays at the beach or whatever. I don't know that. What I do know is every time their content's out there and it stops to scroll, it's I will help you build a better landing page. Your niche is failing. I built this company to scale, or whatever it might be. For me, that stops the scroll. But for me, that grabs my attention, wants me to know more. And I almost investigate it, not where I just watch it and sort of, it goes over my head, but I stop and I want to know more. Almost like clicking through to a CTA to find out, even more about that. Is that the way forward? Is that the giving value, stopping the scroll, not talking all about me, trying to fix a problem for your target audience? I feel that is. Or have you seen anything else, Dan? Anything else you think is as good a tactics as that?
Yeah, so the time to tell the stories basically is when it's showing the audience that you're the guy to listen to. Like if Alex Hormozy said, I've made $100 million, this is why you should listen to me about business. Here's the lessons I've learned. Rather than some guy called like Fred from Southampton who's telling you about life coaching and how he had a really hard life. No one really cares about that stuff. All they care about is what they can get from you. And you should definitely focus more on that. And it's definitely extenuated by the stories, just as long as it's not the story first and then the lesson. It should be the lesson first and then the story to kind of back it up and give a bit of context.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In teaching, there's a term called reciprocal teaching, where you learn something and you teach someone else by, talking to them about it, and it goes like a two-way channel. Sometimes I feel that talking about themselves, put them out there is a little bit like that you're trying to put something out. I don't quite get it when they're talking about how difficult their life is on posts. However, I do use that. I must admit, I'm not going to say I don't ever completely talk about what I've done in my life and the ups and downs of it, but I save it. Dan, I save that for the DM strategy. I save that for a conversation. I've saved that for actual like coaching itself, so it lands, so it hits home, so they have that epiphany, that moment, that light bulb moment where it resonates. Do you agree with those tactics? Do you think maybe that even talking about me, that maybe I should be a bit more forward, a bit more out there with some of the stuff I've done, or do you think it's best to sort of hold it back so it hits harder?
Yeah, talking about it in the DMs is definitely a good idea. I think you've kind of got to think of each part of the funnel as a completely different thing. So with the content, you'd be thinking more about building trust and just positioning yourself as the guy who knows about X thing which you sell. Then it would be in the DMs, anyone who engages with that content, who's obviously in the market for X thing, X coaching thing, you DM them. Maybe they have a specific problem. Maybe you had that problem also. And maybe you could share that story then. And that would definitely resonate a lot more, especially when it's one-on-one, rather than just in the content talking about stuff all the time. And obviously, not everyone has infinite stories as well. So you're going to run out of things to talk about quite quickly, or certainly run out of resonating things to talk about. Whereas in the DMs, you can just reuse and get people on calls by resonating that way. That's definitely the best idea, I would say.
Absolutely. In terms of sales, I know that as an elevator pitch, like your life story, the idea of unraveling it to resonate and to hit home with someone else. I'm not sure that elevator pitch or talking about your life story in posts and stuff is quite the way forward. I feel like maybe you're putting everything out there too early, not allowing for that light bulb moment, not allowing for that moment to resonate, to build connection with a possible client. I feel like that's a mistake that I see, which is common. Too much about me. I've had this problem. I've done this, I've done that. And I think that's not right. They are looking for a problem, almost in Google typing, I want to find out how to do this. That's the idea of stopping the scroll, that they come to yours first. You've answered that question. And then they want to find out more about you, But interestingly, talking about maybe stopping the scroll in some of these, these posts, or who's got, Ashton Hall, not just him, but like Andy Elliott and these guys that pop up on my reels for the day. And it's just shocking, almost like the idea of stopping the scroll, where the aesthetics are so powerful. There's so much going on. With Andy Elliott, there's lots of talk and it's real like alpha and real sort of crazy, high tempo, metal, even with real loud music and stuff. Then with Ashton Hall, it's all about him, the running with the dog, I think is the best one. I've never heard him talk. I've never heard Ashton Hall talk. Or if he does, I think the only thing I've heard him say is, yeah, let's get you to 10K. That's it. One line. That makes me think a lot about this, about that me, the idea of talking about yourself in this stopping the scroll, getting people's attention, your content that you put out. What do you think about that? Or is, what Ashton Hall's doing, looking for personal training, is that a completely different thing? Is there different tactics for those sort of programs?
Yeah, that's a great example actually, because obviously Ashton Hall, all the virality aspects, all the selling kind of comes from him, not even him talking, but just like his image, which is obviously massive. You're going to trust someone who's like a massive guy to be a personal trainer or something like that. And it's just standing out as well. Like he does stuff much differently. he keeps it interesting in the content as well. And it's not all about him. It's just, he is like kind of the brand at the same. It's a weird like contradiction,
It
but
is. It is.
yeah, it's his image, but he's not talking about himself, if that makes sense. Which is kind of like the perfect combination.
I think it is a real interesting combination. The morning routine in particular, there's an aspect there of like trying to teach, trying to show this is what I've done to be powerful, getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning, the banana pill, or that sort of stuff. It's a common, it's like what we're talking about, isn't it? Trying to get value out there without talking about yourself. But then it's such a powerful image of him doing it that it obviously stops the scroll. And there's loads of elements to that, isn't there? There's copycats, the idea of it going viral. I really don't understand the one running with the dog, but I watch it every single time. I even saw one with DJ Khaled the other day. I don't know why I stopped and watched it, but I did. That's that thing, isn't it? It's like the idea of stopping the scroll, and I think he does that perfectly. The Andy Elliott one is something completely different, where it's so alpha male. This is interesting. So the idea of niching down, the idea of like finding your tribe, not resonating with everyone, but resonating with a few. So I think that Ashton obviously resonates with a massive market, right? Huge market. All these men that want to get and be aesthetic or want to be this sort of type. And there's no politics, nothing that is going to turn you away, if that makes sense. But the Andy Elliott one is there. That is there for sure. It's so raw, so powerful, and it's not for everyone. You can see that, 90% of Gen Zs and all these sort of stuff are going to be, whoa, I don't like that. I don't like the alpha male idea. But does that lead into a little bit of like what you said at the start when we started this, that, you signed a client off 30 followers, that sometimes you've only got to resonate to a few? Is that two different tactics, if that makes sense? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it links back kind of to using the content as a magnet to the people that you want to attract. So with Ashton Hall, obviously he's trying to attract as many people as possible to get onto his coaching program. And I think he sells, it's either personal training or like building a business type training. He's obviously built a great business. He's in great shape, and he's going to attract people like that. He's obviously going to get a lot of DMs as well. He gets like 2 million likes per post. He's going to get a ridiculous amount of DMs, maybe there or on the call with potential clients. Obviously, he's really high ticket as well. So on those calls, he'll be talking more about himself and his story. But for the content, it's just sharing lessons, which is going to attract the people that are going to get into the DMs to be able to resonate with you. And then they'll get on a call and then they'll become a client. So you've got to think about it in those 3 separate areas with separate goals. And you don't really want to get those mixed up, because you're going to end up either attracting the wrong people or not resonating enough or running out of stories.
Absolutely. Not resonating enough is a really good point. Something else to think about. So we started doing this quite a long time ago. And then before that, I obviously had the Masculinity Unmasked podcast, right? So I've been trying to look at using podcasts as a way to resonate with people, to get our voice and image out is our way. It's our main social media weapon, if you like. But recently, maybe even so in the last month or two, I've seen lots of other people jumping on this bandwagon, the idea of coaching people to go on podcasts, the idea of coaching them to reach out. We've seen this ourselves, haven't we, Dan? People are now openly reaching out to coaches to coach them to get onto podcasts to land clients, right? What is it about podcasts that maybe is different to putting yourself out on a caption on LinkedIn, to put a picture of yourself? This guy posts himself every day and puts a caption out talking about himself. Why are podcasts different? Why are the reels different? Why are the videos so much more powerful than that? Why is there people trying to mentor coaches to go on podcasts to land clients? Why do you think that's a trend? Why do you think this is a thing?
I think podcasts are almost DMs at scale. They're kind of like the second level of the funnel we're talking about. So obviously no one's going to listen to a podcast of someone that they don't trust or someone that they don't know they're going to talk about the topic they want to know about. They're not going to listen to that. So obviously content first comes before that. You have to share those lessons and build that audience that know that you're talking about the thing that they have a problem for, if that makes sense. I'm not explaining it very well, and then on the podcast, you're kind of building that trust at a different level. You're resonating. You're definitely talking more stories. And I don't know, there's just something about video and hearing the voice that just resonates a lot more. But it's much harder to go viral because you're a stranger, especially with long form content on video. You're a stranger and people don't want to listen to you. So that content is the first level, and then podcasts are the second level, where you can really cash in on all the content you've made to get the clients, really.
No, I agree with that massively. I think so. When you get someone on a discovery call, when you speak to them in person, when you get to know them, you create a relationship, right? Podcasts and these reels, just a great form of that elevator pitch that we're talking about. The idea of actually getting people to resonate, getting people to think that they know you, getting people, well, to actually know you to a degree before you come onto this. Does it fill a gap? Do they fill a gap between posts and discovery call in that funnel, if that makes sense? Do they allow, the client, the person watching it, to build a relationship, to have an idea of who you are before they come onto the discovery call? I think it's something like that, where it gives you a much greater opportunity to build a pre-relationship with someone before they come on. And I think they are so powerful. Any more thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I've got friends who are kind of doing similar things to us where they're coaching coaches, but they're not making podcasts. They don't really like the video content. So they're getting so much lower close rates on the calls, like 20, 30% compared to well over double that for us, because we've definitely made that relationship a little bit more personal already before you're on the call. So that's what they're really good for. And it just shows the importance of mixing up your content, doing different things, even if it's out of your comfort zone, is still important.
Absolutely. And as always, an absolute pleasure to speak. And I always feel like this is a great subject to talk about, isn't it? And I think if there's any new coaches that are going to watch this and they're going to think, 86% of coaches quit or fail within their first year. 70% of coaches will succeed if they are mentored by others. 60% of coaches will succeed if they discover a niche, something that makes them unique. I feel that all of those stats lead so well, are overwhelmingly evident, that if you talk solely about yourself on your content, you will fail. That there has to be an element of value, has to be something that you're giving to the listener, to the person watching it, that isn't talking about you, because ultimately they don't want to know about you. They want to know how you can help them. They want to know how you can help fix their problem or get them to the next level. I think that's my real take home from this, Dan. But have you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you summarized the main lessons really well. I think if anyone's listening, if you like our voices, we're definitely great coaches as well. So hopefully we've built some trust with people. And yeah, it's been good podcast.
Absolutely. Dan, loved it. And as always, let's catch up in a week or two. And guys, remember, don't fall into the coach trap.